Hi, my name is Lauren, and welcome back to Emporio's Financial Literacy Series. Today's video will piggyback off last week's Intro to Budgeting and dive into the three main budgeting methods. Here's an overview for today's lesson. First, I will take you through the steps of budget creation, then segue into the three main methods: zero-based budgeting, the 50-30-20 rule, and the pay yourself first method. After that, I will touch on the final step of budget creation and give you a quick glimpse into next week's lesson. Let's get started. According to Khan Academy, the 5 essential steps to create yourself an effective budget are as follows. First, determine your net income. Second, track your expenses. Third, establish realistic financial goals. Fourth, pick a budgeting plan that fits your situation. And fifth, adjust your lifestyle and check up on your budget. Following these 5 steps to budgeting will unlock a world of security and organization to propel your goals forward. To make sure you get a confident grasp on these essentials, let's take a closer look. Okay, step 1 is to determine your net income. First, it's important to know what net income actually is. Your net income is the amount of money you have coming in after deductions like taxes, Social Security, and 401k. It is important for the income number that you build your budget around to be your net income and not your total starting income. A common mistake that new budgeters make is assigning all their original pre-tax salary to different categories without accounting for taxes and other bites out of their income. If you make this mistake, you will end up short of money when you try to begin your budgeting plan. It is important to know the true status of your net income and be honest with yourself. Without budgeting with honesty, it will fall apart. Step 2, tracking your expenses. In the last video, I mentioned pulling your recent bank and credit card statements to observe recent spending patterns, as well as listing out all of your expenses, both fixed and variable. Once you have done this, you can use one of the budgeting methods I will explain on the next slide to tailor your budget to your spending trends and assign your net income to properly cover all of your expenses while still remembering to allot some to your savings. It is important to start with your fixed expenses because those are often more difficult to cut down. Once you know how much of your income is needed for those, you can then list out your variable expenses and see if there are any that you need to cut back on to accommodate both your basic living expenses and long-term goals. Speaking of goals, step 3 is to establish realistic financial goals for yourself. Without a vision for the future, you will not be as motivated to follow through on your budget. Whether it's paying off a debt, becoming financially independent, setting up a working emergency fund, or saving up for your dream vacation, you need to have a realistic finish line to drive your budgeting journey. While you should be excited about these goals, keeping it real with yourself is essential, as setting your sights too high in the very beginning can often be discouraging in the long run and frustrate your budgeting efforts. Start small and work your way up to big plans. Next, we have step 4. Pick a budgeting plan that fits your current financial situation. There are 3 main budgeting techniques that I will explain and then outline the pros and cons of. First, we have zero-based budgeting. Second, the 50-30-20 rule. And last, the pay yourself first budget. Okay, let's start with zero-based budgeting. The success of your zero-based budget is in the details. This method requires you to assign a job to every dollar of your take-home pay, as described by Fidelity Investments. In the end, all of your net income will be divided into categories. For example, housing and utilities, transportation, groceries, dining out, student loans, gas, and savings are all examples of categorized expenses. One common misconception about zero-based budgeting is that you spend every dollar of your income to get your monthly balance to zero. That is not the case. The true purpose of zero-based budgeting is to preemptively decide how to properly allocate every dollar of your income into a predetermined category and prevent cash from sitting idle in a bank account. You are not going out of your way to deplete your resources and spend every penny that you make each month. Any income that you have left over after covering your expenses should be assigned to a savings account, retirement fund, or emergency fund for a rainy day, and all of your transactions should be planned and intentional. The pros of using this type of budget are that it A, heightens your financial awareness and helps you root out any unnecessary spending habits you may have, and B, It allows you to tailor your budget to your savings goals by meticulously monitoring every expense dollar so that you can maximize your savings. On the flip side, the cons of a zero-based budget are firstly that it requires a significant amount of hands-on planning. While this planning is mostly encountered up front during budget creation, it can be overwhelming for a new budgeter to have such a rigid expense plan, and tiring to make all the necessary adjustments with every fluctuation of income or change in expense trends. This leads to the second downside, in that this method is very time consuming. All that expense monitoring and budget adjusting can be exhausting and requires a large amount of your time. Lastly, if you have a variable income, meaning that you don't have a consistent paycheck each month and the amount always varies, this method will be nearly impossible. The zero-based budgeting technique is reliant on a steady cash flow that can be allocated in the same quantities to the same categories every month. Each time it changes, you would have to redraw your budget, which is not a realistic or sustainable choice if your income fluctuates majorly on a monthly basis. The 50-30-20 rule. The 50-30-20 rule was introduced by Senator Elizabeth Warren in her book All You're Worth: The Ultimate Lifetime Money Plan. This rule has you devote 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. This is a really straightforward method that, above all, requires honesty with yourself about what you really need versus what you want. Needs are expenses that, as Investopedia phrases it, are necessary for survival. When assigning expenses to the needs category, you can't talk yourself into that mani-pedi or entertainment subscription that you feel you can't live without. Examples of true needs are rent, car payments, utilities, groceries, insurance, etc. After you've placed the appropriate expenses into your needs category, refer back to your past spending habits and find out how much money you would normally spend on these expenses. Then, compare that number to the 50% of your net income that has been assigned to this group. If all your needs are covered with the 50% and you have money left over, you can put those extra funds into your savings and reach your goals faster. If you come up short of money and the 50% is not enough to meet your needs, consider cutting down where you can in certain areas and consider more frugal lifestyle changes, like affordable housing and smaller, less expensive cars. Next, we have wants. Your wants are non-essential expenses that add convenience and enhance lifestyle, but are not absolutely necessary. Examples are new phones, new clothes, jewelry and accessories, eating out, entertainment subscriptions, vacations, etc. These are all fun things that you can integrate into your spending, but you have to keep it within the 30% limit and not go overboard. If keeping within the lines of your 30% allocation is a challenge, set a long-term savings goal to keep in mind each time you want to make that little immediate splurge. Do you go over budget on a new iPhone model, or do you keep your current phone and save up for your dream vacation? The choice is yours. Okay, savings. According to Senator Warren's model, the final 20% of your net income is dedicated to your savings. Whether that is a retirement fund, savings account, or an exciting financial goal, you get to assign that 20% to any form of savings that you choose. Consistently tucking away this 20% of your net income gives you a nice buffer should anything unexpected like a family or medical emergency occur. Your savings are the vital stepping stone between your situation today and an exciting, secure tomorrow. Some pros to using this method are that it works regardless of how much income you are bringing in and operates off percentages of your money, not rigid amounts. It's very easy to use and adapt to your situation, whether you have variable or steady income. Like zero-based budgeting, it addresses your expenses first, but still highlights the importance of consistent savings. It also makes you more aware of your true needs versus your wants and provides a long-term, sustainable option for budgeters at any stage of life. The cons are that the 50-30-20 rule doesn't account for inflation. So if goods become more expensive but your salary remains the same, your income might not cover what it could in the past. Additionally, if you need to catch up on retirement savings, you might need to adjust your percentages and lifestyle to accommodate a more savings-oriented budget. The last method I will touch on today is the pay yourself first method, also known as reverse budgeting. This technique takes a different approach, reorienting your focus to tackle your savings first and spend less energy caught up in your expenses. The first step in the Pay Yourself First method is to identify your goals and when you want to accomplish them by. For example, if you decide in January that you want to save $2,000 to take a trip over Thanksgiving in November, you would divide your goal amount, $2,000, by the 10 months of January through October that you have until your target vacation date. That comes out to $200 a month, which means you need to save that amount consistently every month to meet your goal in time. These goals can be in almost any form, like getting a certain number in your retirement fund by a certain period of time, or reaching a target amount in an emergency fund. Any other goal that you set can really be applied to this method. With your goals and required amounts established, work out how much money you need to cover your expenses and see if your savings goals can realistically fit within your means. At this point, you can either make some slight lifestyle adjustments and cost cuts to reach your goals on target, or make changes to your target dates in order to accommodate your style of living. It is important to keep these goals realistic and not make any dramatic changes to your daily life. Leveling down on subscriptions, using public transportation instead of having a car, and dialing down on non essentials like eating out can be helpful. But cutting all wants out of your life and making drastic cuts to your spending can often collapse your budget in the long term. Some pros about this budget are that it's low maintenance and helps spotlight your goals, shedding an optimistic light on your budget. The cons are that A, it lacks a structured expense plan, which most budgeting beginners find helpful to stay on track, and B, it isn't effective if you have a lot of debt. If you risk having a negative net worth and are in a massive amount of debt, regaining financial independence and stability should be your main focus, and all other goals should be paused as you find your way back on pace. Now that we've looked at the most common budgeting options, you can assess your situation and pick the best plan for you. Once you've done that, you may need to make some of the cost cuts that I mentioned earlier in order to reach financial stability and long-term success. Once you've gotten started, always come back to your budget each month. Monitor expenses and look over your financial statements. Did you overspend anywhere? Did you assign too much money to one category? If you notice recurring trends that don't align with your budget, make the adjustment. As long as it's not reckless spending, your budget should accommodate you and give you a sense of freedom and control. You should not feel imprisoned by your budget. Next week, I will cover retirement and emergency funds. We will look at what they are, what their purpose is, how to set them up, and their importance to your long-term financial stability. Here's a list of all the sources I used in this video. I pulled from Khan Academy, Investopedia, Fidelity Investments, and NerdWallet. If you're interested in further individual research, please check out these articles and see what other information these sites offer. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this video has helped you towards financial success. Please check back next week for our lesson on retirement and emergency funds.